Well, to find out more about so-called tech addiction, I spoke with Brittany Davidson. Now, Brittany is a doctoral researcher in information systems at the University of Bath. And I began by asking her about the effectiveness of digital detox.
Well, digital detox is actually not a new phenomenon. There have been some research articles actually in the 90s that talked about the notion of digital detox, and actually it was called a fad even then. So my own personal view of digital detoxes is that they're a solution that are lacking a problem to address.
So then what was it you think they saw in the 90s that first brought this about?
Well, I think there's a key thing that people probably should remember a bit more than we actually do, is that with most new technologies that have ever really happened, we've had a bit of a knee-jerk adverse reaction to them. So we can think of examples even back to the telephone in the early 1900s, that when the telephone first started, we assumed it would make you deaf or it could make you mentally ill. We can think of more recent examples about violent television and violent films causing violence offline. We can link that to a slightly more recent example of violent video games causing aggressive behavior offline. And now we're thinking about smartphones and technology usage, and that these technologies are inherently bad and they're causing things like depression, anxiety, and lack of sleep. But the thing is that when we look at these older examples of technology and the negative side effects of them, largely they've been debunked. So violent video games and television certainly has no associations with violent behavior offline. And we're seeing this trend again with problematic smartphone usage, that the evidence is very lacking, that we can't really prove that that is true.
So a lot of people are wondering if there isn't perhaps a direct connection between the actual devices themselves. What about the amount of time that we are spending on these devices and what we're spending our time doing? How has that changed over the last decade or so?
Well, of course, our time spent on devices will have increased, but that isn't intrinsically a problem. So as we sort of continue to go through, more and more things are being digitized. So when email first came in, this was revolutionary, and we're starting to see healthcare systems going online as well. And that's been quite a long and challenging process. And now we're seeing digital devices being integrated into the homes beyond Wi-Fi, that we have digital assistants like Alexa and Google Assist and Google Home, that this is becoming very normal and mainstream. So of course our technology use has increased dramatically through the workplace and in our social lives. Like, we have never been so connected before. However, what we do know about technology use, and specifically in sort of our work on smartphones, is that our use is frequent and habitual. So what we found recently is that people will pick up their phones on average around 85 times a day. And this is a study that we replicated of some of our colleagues back in 2015, that people again picked up their phones about 85 times a day. So it's very, very similar numbers. So in terms of technology use and it being problematic, I don't really see that that is problematic, but it is frequent and habitual.
And we did see that the World Health Organization listed gaming addiction as something that they were concerned about, the amount of times not just young eyes are spending on these devices, how early they're starting, and even the number of times that they blink because they're literally scrolling through and staring at these screens. What about those concerns?
Well, this assumes that there really is a way that we can be addicted to technology. So if in the UK, there's been quite a lot of interest in screen time and its effects on society, but more specifically young people. So we've had a large government inquiry into this. And when you actually look at these studies that look at technology usage and whether this is problematic, which often people assume it is, there are a few key problems with these studies. Firstly, they rely on asking people what they do with their technology. So it's like me asking you, how often do you use your smartphone? How long do you use your smartphone, or whichever technology of interest? Now, the problem here is that what people think they do with their phones or other technologies and what they actually do when you measure it objectively from the device itself does not align. And that's just because, as we hinted at before, technology has become so integrated in daily lives that we're not aware of it. Our usage is so second nature. So the issue here is that we've found in our research that there is no connection between what people think they do and what they actually do with their devices. So this whole research base that's relying on self-report, which suggests there is such thing as technology addiction, gaming addiction, really is quite questionable, that you're not really measuring actual behaviour. So therefore you can't start going and linking, and you need to be cautious of trying to get any clinical implications based on this, because you're not measuring what people are actually doing with their devices.